Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Dogma podcast. One more week. I am Jose and I'm joined like every single week by the all knowledgeable Blake.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Jose. And I'm ready to express some very strong opinions.
Looking forward to those opinions as always. And this time on the receiving end, we will have a classic. Actually, a classic called The Thing by John Carpenter from 1982, I think.
Yeah, older than me. Not nearly as old as you.
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't remember watching it when I was little, but yeah, it has been a while, since the first time that I watched this movie. And probably it's one of those movies that I watched like 6 or 7 times.
So, we've both seen this movie before. I know that I saw this for the first time as an adult. I'm guessing mid-20s. But it's been quite a while since I've seen this.
Yeah. So, I think that I picked this one. I gave you like several options to watch. And then at the end...
I believe what happened is I picked a movie and you said, I don't want to hear people talk. Let's watch a horror film.
Sorry. You pick something where two people talk for 2 hours about nothing coherent, and you decided to call it a movie.
It's fine. I'm just saying the context here is a little different than you presented it.
Well, the context, about like strong opinions too, is that you consider that a movie. I consider it a bit more of a diarrhea of ideas, just in that subgenre. I don't know about that one. Maybe that one is amazing, but, I consider that there is more engaging things.
So instead, we watched a very timely 80s horror film. That's a joke. We're not answering questions. Let's discuss the film. Yeah.
Because Ennio Morricone learned how to use synthesizers for this movie doesn't make it timely to the 80s.
All joking aside, when the opening credits pulled up, and we'll get to the synopsis right now, there are these there's quintessential 80s horror synthesizers, but in the best way possible. I was like, I have missed movies that open like this. Like, I'm not joking. I had this thought. This is
that's
amazing.
fair. That's fair. So, as this was like, I gave you like several suggestions, but the reason why I selected this is because I feel like in the last 5 years or so, there has been a bit of a renaissance of body horror. I don't think that it gets to, like the mainstream. I don't think that the next Marvel movie is going to be a body horror movie, But I had the feeling that there is a bit of a resurgence of that genre. We had like Titane like some years ago. We had a Crimes of the Future Past, like the Cronenberg one. And we also had The Substance, So for this one, I was just thinking, hey, can we go back into just looking into some of the earlier days of body horror? And I feel like
I agree with you. We both saw the Cronenberg film. Crimes, what was it? You said it.
Crimes of the Future?
Yeah, Crimes of the Future, something like that. You have asked me for years if I've seen Titane, and I haven't. I didn't realize until this moment that it had body horror. Interesting.
It's an interesting movie. Let's just go with that.
All right.
It's like a perfect representative of Uncertain Regard, award winner in Cannes.
Speaking of Cannes, yes. All right, let's go.
Yes. Speaking of Cannes, yes. But yeah, so that's the reason why I pick up the thing. I think that is I have like an endearing place for it, Since I've been watching like many times, even like when we're rewatching it on Prime Video, it's one of those very few movies that I see is like, oh, I can just resume from exactly the end of the movie because I watched it here like probably 4 or 5 years ago. So It was great to actually see it with my boyfriend that he had never seen it before.
Oh, you're showing your boyfriend so many interesting films for the first time lately.
Yep. Yes, I am. I don't know if he feels the same, optimistic way. But yes, that I am doing. But yeah, so this was my pick. Why don't you summarize it?
Sure. So the film takes place in Antarctica, on Antarctica. I think both are correct. Antarctica in this world, and I don't know how the real science is made up of several camps, um, by not necessarily by nationality. Okay, we see in the opening of the film a helicopter who's flying after a beautiful husky, and they're trying to shoot it from the helicopter. And I was really, really upset at this in the beginning
Yeah.
until I remembered the plot of the film. I was like, okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we see these Norwegians flying around trying to shoot this dog. The Norwegians end up landing at the camp of an American base, where Kurt Russell lives, which is important. And the Norwegians aren't
Can
speaking.
Russell, can Russell and other Americans, but he said the movie
Sure,
is
there
pretty
are other
explicit
people
that it's
there.
like Carl Russell.
Yes. Um, so the Norwegians land. They don't. I don't know if they don't speak English, but they're not speaking English to the Americans. And the Americans are like, "What the hell are these crazy Norwegian people doing?" They end up shouting at each other. A Norwegian shoots one. The dog escapes, and everyone's like, "What the hell just happened with the Norwegians?" They decide to investigate. They go to the Norwegians' camp, and everything is destroyed, burnt out, exploded. But they do find a humanoid-like carcass that they bring back to their American camp. They do an autopsy, and they discover inside this humanoid form. I'm not sure how this old man has
No,
such
no.
expertise, but he's like, well, this is clearly a life form that can imitate other life forms.
Well, I mean, they take like more steps to get to that, but it's true that the first thing that they actually say is that, hey, all of the organs inside of this body, they are normal. It's just the body that is a bit weird. But then we discover like more. I don't know if we want to get into spoiler territory because it's like, as you said, is that you remember the plot, but it's like it was interesting to see through my boyfriend's eyes because I remember the whole thing from the beginning to the end, and just like how you connect the dots about like, oh, okay, so they were not completely assholes, those Norwegians, or when you start like just piecing like the different pieces. So let's just say that the movie like evolves into a bit more of who is the bad guy because they start getting infected and no one really knows who to trust and what to do for confirming if the people that they say that they are non-bad guys are really non-bad guys.
So I agree. Let's not spoil the plot any further. Although the film opens, the very, very, very first scene is watching an alien spacecraft
Oh yeah.
craft land on Earth. So let's just say aliens landed in Antarctica. Americans also landed in Antarctica. There's a conflict.
Yeah, not a direct conflict, but honestly, as a sci-fi piece, I think that it goes in an interesting manner. Like not so
Interesting.
direct.
Would you classify this as science fiction?
Sci-fi horror,
Interesting.
like Alien. Yeah, basically like
But
Alien is
Alien
also
takes place
sci-fi.
on a spaceship.
Yeah, and here there is a spaceship. Even if there is no spaceships, is that you still can be sci-fi.
Great. I would describe this film as a sci-fi film, but my husband loves sci-fi, and I thought about it, like, oh, you should check this sci-fi film out. But I think he would have been, as a sci-fi lover, disappointed had I forced him to see this film.
Okay,
Just
that's
because it's
fair.
not like a. That's the only reason I was asking.
Yeah, that's fair. So, what did you think of this film?
It's a good film. Full stop. Period.
We're done. Let's move to the questions.
It's a good film. I think the direction is remarkably assured, which isn't always promised in a John Carpenter film, I feel like. Although that's just my
Yeah.
gut reaction. I would have to jump in to look at his other films. It builds suspense well. It plays with your emotions. That being said, unfortunately, I think the quality of the special effects just roots it so firmly in the 80s that it's difficult to take seriously when you see the monster.
Okay. That's fair because what I was telling to my boyfriend is that the last time that I watched it, that probably was like 5 years ago, it was already started to show age, But the previous time that maybe was like 10 years ago, I was still like pretty impressed. Hey, for being early 80s, this is really impressive. Is that this is actually like pretty solid, like, like special effects that even like for nowadays standard, it's like, okay, yeah, it looks a bit aged, but it's still like fairly decent. Right now, I just felt it's like there are like many scenes where they use stop motion. And now you realize that it's like, oh, okay, so what they did is like they just move like the tentacles like a tiny bit, and they just use it. They went like pretty cheap, and instead of doing like, hey, let's do 30 frames, is that they just did 15 frames per second. And it's like pretty glaring that it's like, okay, this is where the limits were for the budget that you had, But there is still
it was
like
clear that it was stop motion. Like, I understood that, but I never put it together that was a budgetary choice, because I would think that that's so human time intensive, that it would be super expensive.
Maybe, but it's like if you think about like some other scenes, like when some of the monsters, like SPU, have tentacles like just come out their mouth and start like just like fluffing all around, is that is not a stop motion. Or for example, like when that spider is just like getting burned and they start like just doing this dance, like ridiculous dance, is like, hey, that's not a stop motion. You could have gotten better end result maybe if you use like a stop motion, but it's like the only technology that you had. This is 82. Is like if you think about Alien, for example, is that, hey, in Alien, new movies of Aliens, is that everything is CGI, but on there, once there was a guy with a giant like costume on top of him to also like just like make those effects. Everything is going to be like makeup, sort of like makeup,
prosthetics,
or prosthetics or animatronics, or there is only like so many options that you have, but you had to make it happen like visually. It's like the actors could see this in front of them. There were no options of CGI. So from that perspective, it's like this is super creative. Like all of the kind of workarounds that they did for, hey, how do we put this on the screen? I feel like is incredibly creative. Now, what I feel like is pretty aged is on the pacing. I had a feeling that there are like some gaps and some motivational stuff that is like, this feels like a slasher from the 80s.
Yeah, it does feel. And again, I hesitate saying it this way because it is a good film for any point in time, but there are some things that really, really root it in the early 80s. Like, they're like, this is the hill where we live.
Yep. So once again, is that I like it. I don't think that it's like, for example, like The Exorcist, that I think that is an amazing movie, that it happens to be horror and it happens to be done in the 70s. This a bit more is like, hey, this is a good movie that is the 80s.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to describe it. And I'm honestly thinking back to Lost Boys. If there's a spectrum between Rosemary's Baby and Lost Boys, this is a little bit closer to Lost Boys than I think.
Oh, yeah.
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. We didn't mention Rosemary's Baby, though. What is The Exorcist.
The Exorcist, sorry. In my mind, I was picturing Rosemary's Baby the entire time, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that Rosemary's Baby is a bit more 70s, a bit more like rooted on that specific time. A tiny bit more. It's still like fairly independent. It's not like horror subgenre, like pure horror. I mean, definitely it's horror. But this movie, it has like the best and the worst of the 80s. Like the best is like the creativity, like for special effects. I'm astonished about like all of the stuff that they pull here.
There's some interesting moments of cruelty towards the audience that I felt were particularly bold, and honestly, I know we bring him up in every single podcast, but Hanukkah-like. And if you're listening this far, okay, spoilers are coming a little bit now. There's kind of the first exposure we have to the alien itself is in the dog kennel, and there are other dogs that are not infected. Or not infected, but I don't know what the term is. They don't use a term in the movie.
Yeah.
There's a dog that slowly and carefully is pulling apart the chain link that makes up the dog kennel, and you're like, well, at least one gets away. And the scene goes on for a while, and then the alien just gets the dog. And I was like,
Yeah.
screw you for like letting me hope that this dog was going to escape. And then I was so pissed off.
That's a bit, I didn't need the connection, but that's like a really good point because it's true. It's like for that 1 or 2 minutes, we see the dog that I was just saying, it's like, holy shit, that dog is like amazingly trained. You know, all of the dogs are amazingly trained. That I was like surprised about that, about like how they start like just getting, how do you say, like grumpy? Not grumpy.
Like
And they
riled
can
up.
bark.
They're, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
But it's
because
like
they're
how
all
all
good
of,
boys. All of those dogs were good boys.
yeah, and none of them deserve anything bad to happen to them. But
I
yeah.
can't ever watch a film that has dogs in it that's more than 15 years old without thinking about how they're all dead.
Yeah, well, and also one thing that I was like a bit afraid is that this movie is from the 80s. I don't know how animal cruelty laws were
We like to
enacted
not
back.
think about that.
Okay, okay, just saying because what I was seeing there is are they really shooting that dog? Are they really shooting at that dog at the beginning for actually just like make him like just feel real up? You know,
That scene
I
really
don't
pissed
think
me
that
off. I was like, you can't just start a movie killing a dog.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's like it was exactly the same thing. That is like I started like just remember it's like, oh, this is the trigger.
Yeah.
So,
So,
but yeah,
so
no,
this complaint about timeliness, and it'll be interesting when we actually answer that question. Taking that aside, I still feel like this is a good movie. Like, it's a really...
yeah,
I felt like the pacing was great. I feel like the director didn't ask us to care too much about the characters, but they did give enough for me to understand that they're unique individual people. And it's still scary 42 years later. Like, it's creepy.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. It creates a really good vibe on it that drags you in. Is that, for example, like the scene where they're doing like those blood tests, you know, and they're tying like to the chairs. I remember like liking it from the first time about like this is really good tension about like you're just getting into the skin of the people that is like, okay, I'm tied here, I'm basically fucked whatever happens. Now there are other parts, honestly, another spoiler alert, like the part with the Dr. Blaine or something, I don't remember like what was his name, but Blair is like how he turns to be spoiler alert, how he turns to be like infected and how he has been like building another like a spaceship. It felt like, okay, this truly comes now that you mentioned that it's like this is a remake of a movie of the 50s, is that I can see the influence or like comparing the attack of the body, the invasion of the body snatchers.
Wait. I didn't say this is a remake from a movie from the 50s.
Oh, didn't you tell me that before we started?
No, I said that there is another film called The Thing from the 50s that I almost watched by mistake. I don't know what that movie is about.
Yeah, so the film storyline concerns a United States Air Force crew and scientists who find a crashed flying saucer frozen in the Arctic ice.
It
And
is?
a humanoid body.
The 82 version's a remake?
I think so. Honestly, it's like there may be like different things. They are forced to defend themselves against the still alive and malevolent plant-based alien when he's accidentally thought out.
Well, that sounds like it's really a remake. Well, I know what my next movie is.
Yeah. More faithful, see.
And it's 1954?
The original is 51.
51. Oh, The Thing from Another World? Is that the full name?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, they may have like some differences. I don't think that it has like the contagious part. But when I think about like the invasion of the body snatchers, we didn't watch it, no?
No.
We should watch it one day. Yeah. Like the 50s, that also like got remade to the 70s. Is that those two, they share like some of the premises. In this case, I had the feeling that some aspects of it that they feel a bit more campy or a bit more like far-fetched. Like the guy like building up like a spaceship below.
Out of the helicopter?
There is a bit more. It's like, dude, in one day, it's like he did all of this. how, when did he leave? And then it's like the motivation of the other guy that is left behind that makes no sense about like, hey, we know that we four are not infected. Let's split. Is that made no sense? There are like many things that I feel is like, okay, let's not think about it. So for me, it's like, it's a good movie. But unfortunately, I think that the charm of the first couple of times that I watched them is starting to wear thin. I think that it's like cinema right now is at a different point that is going to be like making you look for tighter, like scripts and tighter experiences. Not only the CGI. The CGI, I don't care too much about it. So like the special effects.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Can I ask your interpretation of the end? And now we're just getting into full spoilers. The film ends with two of the characters watching the camp burn.
Yep.
Are we supposed to wonder if they're infected or not?
Yes. It looks like a bit open.
Got it.
Yeah, because they even like ask each other, it's like, hey, what about if you're infected? It's like, hey, if I were infected, is that don't you think that I would have done something already?
But they talk about how they can't allow the aliens to freeze again, right?
Correct.
But they're going to freeze. So
Correct.
The fact that they are choosing not to kill themselves, they're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the part that gives like a bit more on the air about like, hey, are they letting themselves like just die? Because it would be a bit more of a humanitarian thing of, hey, let's just die gradually, and that's it. Maybe the humanitarian thing would be is like, hey, let's actually like kill each other.
In that situation, I was so cold. This entire movie, I felt cold.
I just felt like, I was telling some of my boyfriends, like, that's going to be Chicago in 2 months.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think that it left it like open on purpose. I think that maybe they thought that it was like a smarter ending, than actually like trying to close it. But as you were saying, it's like as they repeat so many times that is like we shouldn't leave the thing gets into civilization. It feels weird that they don't try to close it up of we need to kill each other.
Yeah.
Is that if there was like only one of us, if we were not killing ourselves, if we weren't committing suicide, that would mean that we are the thing. So in this case, it's more like if you have two people and they are not trying to kill each other, that may mean that both of them are the thing.
That's my read on it, but I was like, am I looking for too much in this script?
I think that it's a bit messy, and especially as the movie progresses, is like I think that the motivations become like weirder. There is like less congruence, It's like because why Blair would sabotage the radio if he was the thing?
Yeah, you would think you would want more uninfected humans to come and spread and...
Yep. Yeah, so it's a bit more like, so what you want is just being the last one that survives, killing everyone, and then at that point is when you freeze and just wait, or what exactly? It makes no sense.
If your motivation was to build a mini spaceship and fly away, like that was the whole point, wouldn't it be in more of your interest not to kill everyone and just to take what you need?
Everything becomes like a bit, I don't know, messy towards the end in the last act. I just feel it's like, I think that at this point is that you have like the amazingest scene when they're all tied up, but everything else, it turns like a bit of a mess of, just rush it, just complete this thing. It's like everything explodes and it's like the same end result as in the other base. No.
Also, this is a minor complaint, but the primary inhabitants of Antarctica at that time apparently were men in their 60s who were pretty overweight and had a hard time running. I was like, I don't think they let people like that go to Antarctica.
Not all of them, but part of me was like feeling refreshed about, like, this is the 80s, where they deliberately made a point of not everyone has to be a star level beautiful. You have Kurt Russell, that it looks like a Hollywood star, but then you have like a lot of people, as you say, it's like the captain of the mission. He's in his late 60s, probably.
And this isn't a complaint about beauty or not beauty. I just, like, are these people able to walk in snowshoes? Like, it's an unforgiving environment. Why are we shipping the oldest men in Hollywood to Antarctica?
Dude, wait a second. There are people over 50 years old in Chicago. And they move around.
I really didn't think about
winter.
it that way. Yeah.
So I can understand that it's like, hey, you're going to be like doing like a world-class scientific mission. You don't want to send people that they will have more challenge than other younger people. True, but it's a balance.
Sure, I'm just saying, in a heat wave or a polar vortex, what age group tends to die? That's all I'm saying.
The poor people that cannot afford a house. Okay,
That is sad.
well, I'm sorry, dude, but it's like when you're indoors, is that you're going to have like proper insulation. Do you think that it's going to be like making a difference when they actually blew up the base and they're at -40 out there or -100? It's like, no, everyone is going to die. It doesn't matter if you're like 30 or 70. You're going to die.
I know. I just honestly speaking, practically, I think there's like an age limit to go to Antarctica because it's so dangerous. And this cast skewed very old. I was just like, is this really who we're sending to Antarctica?
Well, also think one more thing is like previous generations, is that they used to age way faster. Just look at like at movies from the 60s and 70s when you see people that is like, oh, I'm 35. It's like, holy shit, that person, I thought that I would be 55 at least.
It's really true.
So,
like, aren't the Golden Girls supposed to be like in their early 50s?
something like that. You say like, no, they had to be 70s. Like, oh no, they're still working, all that thing. So, like for the context of the show. But in this case, what resonated with me is like, I thought about the part is like, hey, they're older than what I thought. But it's like most of the old people are people that they work on. Basically, I just need to stay here. So like the doctors, that is like, hey, I don't need to go out there. I don't need to fly. It's like, it's more about like the experience that I have actually when it actually dictates that I'm here. I'm not going to have to do like hunting at -100. So
I just feel like it's like space. Like you can have all the experience, but like America's still not going to send a 65-year-old to the Mir space station because you have to have physical fitness to survive a harsh environment.
Yeah, well, sorry, but it's mostly about like the takeoff. It's about like the gravity pressure that you're going to be like dealing with during that time. And I don't know, when you're a 0G, it's like probably it's going to be bad. But in this case, we're talking about like, hey, you go in a plane to the Antarctica, and then you're like left in a perfect environment that you're not going to even realize that it's -100 degrees out there.
Unless an alien comes into your camp and you have to run through the snowstorm.
And then everyone dies. Everyone dies. There is no difference. Don't be so ageist.
No. It's not an ageist thing, but I think we agree on this. It is refreshing that it was the 80s, and so everyone didn't have to be beautiful. I do like the realness of the characters. I'm very curious to hear what the answers to our questions are, because this is a good movie and dated.
Definitely. So, should we go over the questions then?
Yes.
Would you watch it again?
Yeah.
When? So, did you watch it with your husband?
No, I did not.
Would you watch it tomorrow with your husband?
I mean, if he was... Yeah, I would. I mean, it's a good movie. It's entertaining. If he really wanted to watch it, I would watch it with him. I would definitely watch this at, like, Halloween time.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. For me, I will watch it again. Probably not tomorrow. Probably I will leave it like some time to rest. As I was telling you, it's like there is a bit of a breaking the charm for me after watching it like so many times and just having been like more than 40 years since it was released, that I had the feeling that it's like, let's just treasure it. If I watch it more like back to back, is that this maybe like wear off faster.
Yep. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Would you recommend it?
Yes, I would.
To whom?
I mean, there's not even that much gore in it.
Dude, there is a point, sorry, spoiler alert, there is a point that they're like trying to resuscitate someone, and it's like the chest opens and it actually just bites the arms of the person that is trying to resuscitate him.
You're right. There's not that much realistic gore in this, so it's not like it's like I have a hard time watching Eli Roth films, for instance. This film, I felt like, oh, this is like the Muppet Babies version of gore. Um,
Okay.
so
There is no gore porn. There is no gore porn.
there's no torture porn, I guess, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would recommend this to anyone. But I would say, look, this is a real horror movie, but it's like 1982 horror, so it's like kind of funny in its horror moments.
Kind of funny. I don't think that it was like its intention, but okay. I think that I would recommend it. As we were mentioning earlier, I had the feeling that body horror is making a comeback. And I think that this a movie, albeit I think that its age is a good representative of where body horror as a genre comes from. So, yes, not to everyone on the street about like, hey, how you watch this thing, but still by nowadays standards. I mean, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I was still surprised when someone would tell me, is that, oh, I had never watched the thing. I was like shocked about like, seriously? Is there such an iconic movie that if you like horror or sci-fi, you have watched it? Is that there is no way of avoiding this movie. Nowadays, I have the feeling that it's becoming like more and more forgotten, surprisingly, So I would recommend it, not on the street, but definitely like to anyone that tells me I want horror, I want sci-fi, or I want body horror.
It's interesting because I would say I was a 90s kid. I was a 90s kid. So if I was, let's say, 13 in 1995, the age of this film would be equivalent to something that was released in the 50s. So just like for kids now, it's so long ago and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to think.
Yeah. I rather not think about that because that's like one
Because
of the
for you
points
it's
that
the
I feel
40s
really
because you
old.
were born in the 70s.
Yeah. It was like World War II. You remember Casablanca? It was basically that. Would you remember the thing?
Yeah. I mean, for a couple seconds, I was like, why are they killing the dog? And then it all came screaming back. So, yes.
Yeah. The same thing here is like when I started like, wait, why does he just star? And we spent like a while like joking about like, oh, it's one of these street dogs of Antarctica. They're hundreds of huskies. That they're like running around. We're
The
just
wild
joking about
huskies
that.
of Antarctica.
The wild huskies, it's just a plague basically. But no, I think it's like exactly the same thing that I recognize, that I remember. Then my boyfriend started connecting the dots about like, why? What if the dog is bad? But he's such a good boy that it's like that.
He is such a good boy. His tail was wagging.
Yeah.
He was just running.
Yeah, he jumps into the American, and the American like, what the fuck is going on here? But yeah, no, I remember like most of it. I remember like the scene with the ant, with the spider, like
I did
dancing.
too. I didn't realize I remembered that until I saw it, and I was like, yeah. Is this a meme, or did I just see this?
I like that scene. Like from the first time, I thought that, oh my god, he's dancing. Or like the scene with the
Also,
chairs.
the scene, I think it's the same. Yeah, it is that scene. It starts earlier where the human's head just kind of like.
Oh, the head. I
slides
just
off.
thought, yeah, that's the spider. Yeah.
was
And it's pretty well made. Yeah, I think that it's like amazingly made. It created like an impression even like by nowadays standards. It feels like this is
And the special effects of that head when the red thing comes out of his mouth, like that was all. Like there are good special effects in this.
Yeah. So yeah. I wonder how they did that special effect.
Because it doesn't
okay.
look like CGI.
Oh no! I don't think that there is any. I mean, it's 82. What's CGI? I mean, just think about like the special effects in Star Wars, how they did it. It's like you're going to be like painting stuff in the film, or you're going to be like doing like a small like tricks with models. But that's as far as you can go.
I've never seen Star Wars except the new one, so I don't know what you're talking about.
That's fine. Is there anything artistic about the thing?
Yeah, I mean, the special effects are interesting, if nothing else. And I say that without joking. Like the claymation, the stop motion, I thought some of that was really beautiful, even if unbelievable. And I think the direction was, I think I used the term remarkably assured earlier in the podcast. It's true. Like I felt like John Carpenter knew what the hell he was doing, which I don't always feel in a John Carpenter film.
I think that in the 80s he was pretty solid. Honestly, Is that I think that you're like taking a bit of a dig here.
Well,
But
sure.
honestly,
Francis
80s?
Ford Coppola was solid in the 70s. Do you feel like he's a solid
Sure.
director after watching Megalopolis?
No, of course not. But it's like we are not talking about a movie like done after his peak time. I mean, I think that Carpenter started like super strong. Well, super strong. Like 80s and 90s, they were fairly solid. Fairly
Yeah, I
solid. Of
mean,
course, it has like some turds, but
Halloween Ends was, remarkable. So
it's peak.
he's definitely
It's
still
peak.
have his
Yeah, he got it.
not quite as good
He
as
still
Halloween
got it.
Kills, but
Yeah, yeah. Okay, sure. I'm just talking about like the 80s and 90s. So you think he did The Fall, Escape from New York, The Thing, yeah, Christine, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, They Live, Memories of Invisible Man, Body Bags, In the Mouth of Madness, Villas of the Dam, not a good, Escape from LA. And yeah, at that point it was already like going down. I remember like Vampires, Ghost of Mars. They're not good movies. But funny enough, he stopped directing almost altogether.
yeah, I was trying to
So
think of
he,
recent stuff he directed, and even there was a remake maybe 10, 15 years ago of The Last House on the Left. And his name I thought was attached to it, but I think he's done a bunch of John Carpenter Presents sort of
yeah,
stuff.
like producer, yeah, probably like more of a producer than I said like a director. Because if you remove like a couple, yeah, some music videos, The Word was his last movie in 2010.
Oh wow, yeah. So he hasn't done anything in a long time.
Yeah, and before that it was Ghost of Mars. That is pretty freaking bad.
Wait, was this one of his first films?
Not the first, but around the first ones, yeah. Because he
For
did
him.
Dark Star, yeah, Dark Star on 74. Yeah, that's the first one. Assault on Precinct 13, yeah. That this may be the only one that is not horror. Yeah. But yeah, going back to the questions. Yeah, I think that the special effects are ahead of his time. More than ahead of his time. It's a bit more of they made the most of what you can do on that time. And the direction was like pretty solid for just creating like very tense moments. I think that probably is the most tense scene with many characters tied to chairs until Annihilation scene. So Alex
That
Garland,
scene was pretty cool.
yeah.
I liked
Sorry,
it.
which one? In Annihilation or The Thing?
No, in the thing when they're all tied
Ah,
and they don't know if any of them are infected, and yeah, I liked it.
Yep. So yeah, like pretty well, like building tension. I think that there is an art to that. Honestly, I think that it's not an easy thing to achieve properly. So is this a timeless piece?
This is just a tricky question for me because I feel like this movie could be remade today as well, having a new set of special effects because the story is good enough for it to be timeless. I think the risk they took on the special effects makes it a little bit rooted as timely. So I'm going to say timeless with the understanding that in 10 years when we rewatch this, I may be like, okay, it's finally timely. But for now, it keeps timeless.
For me, it crossed the threshold. For me, this is timely at this point. Is that the last time that I watched it, it was like getting close, and this time it actually like crossed it. But it's not only about the special effects. The special effects, as I was saying, is I can forgive it from the perspective of, it's the 80s, you did what you could with what you have. It's more about the script. There is like some stuff in there that it feels like super cringy 80s. Without getting to Lost Boys, as you were saying, that is like, it tries to rap that they are the 80s on your face, but it's 80s enough.
It does. Like the anti-hero of McCready, played by Kurt Russell. I mean, he's not really an anti-hero, but he's supposed to be the cool 80s guy in the leather jacket that just doesn't play by the rules. Like, it was such an archetype. But as I said earlier in the podcast, I feel like he didn't want us to invest too much in the characters. He was like, hey, these people are... Anyway, I feel like the way he approached it is he was fine. But yes, they are tropes and archetypes that there's not much to.
Yeah. I also think that Kurt Russell probably was higher because he always plays that role, or he tends to play that role.
And especially having they already done Escape from New York. And,
yeah. So
Selva.
It's pretty close. I mean, actually, like the first scene when you see him, it's not just he playing with the chess computer, and he's like, "Oh, I lost. You're a fuck, bitch."
And then he pours water on the computer.
Yeah, he pours whiskey on the computer. J&B whiskey.
He's drinking whiskey. Like, I'm sure people really drink like that, but they don't typically drink like that and then go fly a helicopter. I was like, I know the 80s were a different time, but you're going to crash that helicopter.
yeah. So timely. Pretty timely. Would you turn this into a TV show?
No, I don't think there's... I think this works as a single sitting film. I don't think it could keep up the suspense in 30 or 60 minute intervals.
I will go with yes. Honestly, I don't think that it would be like a 30, 60 minutes, but I think that you can make this work. Did you watch True Detective, the last season with Judy Foster?
I watched none of them. No.
Good. The first one is pretty good. The rest are...
The Woody Harrelson... McConaughey one.
Oh yeah, the first one, the Woody Harrelson McConaughey. That is like, with this cast, this shouldn't be good. But surprisingly, it is. Now the other seasons are not the best, and the last one is with Judy Foster, and basically the premise is almost that they're in the north part of Alaska, and there is like a scientific base, and then suddenly everyone disappears, and when they meet them up, they were frozen in the snow, and they just made like a whole body horror thing, like all of them like stuck together.
Oh, interesting.
Naked.
Now I kind of want to watch it. Don't people love this Jodie Foster season? No? I thought people really liked it. No?
I think that it was not as bad as the worst, but it's pretty freaking weird. They have like cool stuff, don't get me wrong. You know, is that most of the characters are female. They sound like they're like pretty respectful with the like the native from that area, you know, about like how they're portraying their culture, and it's like pretty mixed between like a white woman, and it's a buddy cop, the story basically, like all of them. So it's like white cop and native cop, just trying to make a bit more coming to terms with some aspects of her culture. So it's okay, but it has like that premise that is like, oh, okay, is that this is a TV show about something really weird is going on, and we don't know exactly where it ends. So I think that you could do it. The only problem with this is that if you have like a slow burn, when you get to the point of there are only 4 out of the 12 that they were at the beginning, is that this becomes harder to keep the tension. It turns into this kind of reality TV shows like Big Brother and the likes. That is, so like you keep eliminating or whatever. No. I will still do it. It's like I think that it could work.
Got it.
But I'm not sure exactly how. I would be interested to at least like give it a try. Now, do you think that this movie could have been better?
This is a tricky question sometimes for me because it's cool because it's 80s, but it's stunted because it's 80s. The answer is yes. Your turn.
Yes. Okay. My answer is also yes. This movie could have been better. As I was saying, I think that the script has some problems with the pacing that, I don't know. I think that it could be like just tinker with a bit, you know, but I think that is more because of the sensibilities have changed, you know, is that we tend to poke at things like a tiny bit more than before. That is like, well, is that the special effects are going to be like razzle dazzle, so you're not going to be like looking behind it. So you're not going to be like wondering too much about like, okay, so this character was doing this and this is the motivation for this, so what? But yeah, overall, good experience, but this is still a bit of a gap. Should we score it?
Yes, we're calling this more or less your pick. So I can score first. I'm going to go with a 7.5.
Okay.
I think this is
My,
good for me.
yeah, my score is also 7.5.
Okay, that tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is fine. It's like I'm just afraid of if I keep watching it, it's going to be like wearing off. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
once
want
this
it to
tops
wear
once
off.
a year, maybe this is our Halloween movie.
Or
I
what do
will
you
admit
mean?
that I did take
Like,
an edible, and so at some point I got uncomfortable, and I was like, wow, this movie is really effective at making me edgy. And I was like, no, I'm terrified because of this.
no, I was completely sober, but I wouldn't watch this next year. I mean, I will watch it again, but it's like, as I was telling you, I'm trying to be protectionist of something that I really like, and I'm afraid that it's going to be suffering.
That's fair. And I think, like I said, I think this film is getting to that place for me. But for now, it's still just like, oh, this is really solid. It's a it's a movie. If I went to a Halloween party, which I don't go to parties, and someone said, "Let's watch The Thing," I would be happy, not been like, "Oh Jesus, somebody's gonna make me
That
watch a shitty
bullshit.
film." Yep.
Yeah. Right. Uh, and I think that then that's it. Anything else to say about the thing?
No, I liked this film, and I had a good time watching it. Despite its problems, it's a good time. So
Yeah.
yeah, check it out.
It's a classic horror that you cannot go wrong with it. If you haven't watched it, the only thing is that just prepare yourself for 80s. Is that
Which is not
prepare
always a bad thing.
yeah, prepared for Ennio Morricone discovering scenes.
Yep.
That
Good
is a
pick.
surprising
Good pick,
choice.
Jose.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, to everyone out there, thank you so much for putting up with us.
And until next time.
Bye.